This is the final transformation. No more proving. There comes a moment that looks like coldness from the outside, but inside it feels like relief. Not the relief of giving up. The relief of finally stopping work you were never meant to do alone. You feel it before you can explain it. A quiet settling, a release of pressure, and once it happens, you don't return to who you were before. In the next moments, you'll recognize the shift that makes you different after this. And you'll understand why when people say you've changed, they're usually reacting to one thing. You stop making it easy for them to stay the same. Most empaths don't start out deep. They become deep because they had to. They learned early to read a room faster than words, soften tension before it explodes, and stabilize connection before it breaks. That skill looks like kindness, but it often began as survival. So when you care, you don't just care. You regulate, you translate, you carry. You notice the pause in a message, the drop in tone, the way someone says I'm fine while their energy says otherwise. And you move toward them to restore closeness. You prove you're easy to love by being low maintenance. You prove you're safe by swallowing your reaction. You prove you're mature by over-understanding. You prove you're not too much by becoming less, and it works. For a while, people stay, but often with comfort, not respect, because you remove the cost of their inconsistency. Here is where the first shift begins. The last transformation starts when your body stops cooperating with self-erasure. You can still do it technically, but you feel the price immediately. You feel it when you type the second message you didn't need to send. You feel it when you laugh at a joke that landed like a small humiliation. You feel it when you agree to plans you don't want because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You feel it when you say it's okay, while your stomach tightens and you hate that you said it again. At some point, the nervous system says enough, not as a scream, as fatigue, the kind that doesn't disappear with rest. You may call it being tired, but what's really happening is you're graduating from a role, the role of emotional assistant. And here's the quiet sign you've entered the final transformation. You stop rushing to repair, someone goes distant. You notice the urge to chase, and then you don't. You refuse to betray yourself to manage someone else's mood. A message sits unanswered. The old version of you would craft the perfect follow-up. Safer, lighter, easier. The new version watches the impulse, feels the anxiety, and stays still. You let silence reveal what words have been hiding, because you finally accept a truth that once felt dangerous to admit. If connection requires you to abandon yourself, it isn't connection, it's compliance. This isn't you becoming avoidant. It's you becoming accurate. You stop asking how to say it so they'll understand, and start asking what kind of person needs you to package your pain to be worthy of care. You stop negotiating your reality. When someone dismisses your feelings by calling you sensitive, you don't build a case file. You don't argue. You recognize the disrespect beneath the sentence and reduce access. When someone becomes warm only after you pull away, you stop calling it love. You call it control. When someone disappears after closeness, you stop treating it like a mystery. You treat it like capacity. You stop explaining away patterns with empathy that costs you self-respect, and people feel it. The dynamic changes because you change your participation. Here's what many miss. If someone only treats you well when they fear losing you, they are not attached to you. They are attached to the access you provide. This is where the proving habit breaks. You stop proving your worth. You stop proving your intentions. You stop proving your boundaries are reasonable. You stop proving your needs are normal. You stop proving you're not asking for too much. Your standards become decisions, not debates. And now it becomes real. You say one sentence and live by it. You don't chase clarity, consistency, or respect. You say it once. You apply it quietly. If someone leaves you confused, you don't send paragraphs. You ask one clean question. If you don't get a clean answer, you step back. If someone speaks with contempt disguised as honesty, you don't argue tone. You end the exchange. You stop volunteering to carry the emotional labor. You let silence reveal whether there's a second engine. This isn't punishment. It's truth. The guilt will rise when you don't chase. Your mind will whisper stories about being mean or cold. Watch what actually happens. You say you're unavailable. They respond sharply. And you don't rush to soothe it. Your boundary doesn't need a babysitter. You take time to reply without apologizing for having a life. You continue the conversation without shrinking. And you notice something uncomfortable and clarifying. Some relationships only survive because you kept paying the emotional bill. When you stop paying, they don't collapse randomly. They reveal what they were. That realization can feel like grief. Not because you lost something perfect, but because you see how long you tried to make something partial feel whole. Here's the deeper shift that makes you different after this. Your compassion finally includes you. Empathy stops being a duty and becomes a resource. You don't donate your nervous system to people who use it to stay immature. And something else changes. Your fear of being misunderstood loses power. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always misunderstand your boundaries. They have to. Understanding would require them to change. So you let misunderstanding happen. You stop fighting for your image. You stop trying to be the good one. You stop offering unlimited access to earn approval. And then comes the test. Someone who once took you for granted suddenly comes back warmer, more attentive, more interested. This is where many reopen the wound. But the question is no longer whether they want you. The question is whether they want you or the version of you that proves so. You watch, not words, patterns. Consistency. What happens after the warmth fades? If the old behavior returns once they feel secure, you don't take it personally. You take it seriously. You are not becoming someone who doesn't care. You are becoming someone who cares without self-abandonment. You can still be gentle. You just stop making your gentleness a place where others wipe their feet. That's why this is the last transformation. Once you feel what it's like to stop proving, you can't unfeel it. Once you taste dignity, crumbs lose their appeal. And this time, you don't announce it. You don't explain it. You don't seek permission. You simply live from a place where your presence is a choice, not a service. After this, you don't just feel different. You move different. And anyone who wants access now has to meet you there. And something else settles into place once you stop proving. Your body feels quieter. Not numb, not shut down, just quieter. Like a room where a loud machine finally turned off. You start noticing how much noise you used to live with, how much tension you mistook for normal, how often your nervous system stayed alert because love felt conditional, attention felt temporary, and safety felt like something you had to earn. Now, you don't earn it, you require it. That alone changes the way you walk into rooms, conversations, relationships. You stop scanning for cues. You stop pre-adjusting your personality. You stop calculating how to be received. You arrive as you are, and if that disrupts the space, you let it. Because for the first time, your internal peace matters more than external harmony. This is where people really feel the difference. You're still kind, but your kindness has weight. You're still attentive, but no longer available by default. You still care, but you don't chase understanding like oxygen. You trust that the right people won't need you to bleed for clarity. And yes, some people fall away here, quietly, slowly, sometimes dramatically. They won't always announce it. They'll just stop reaching, stop trying, stop adjusting. That's not loss. That's alignment correcting itself. What remains is lighter, cleaner, more honest. You may grieve during this phase, not because you made the wrong choice, but because you finally see how much you carried. You grieve the version of yourself who worked so hard to be lovable, who learned early that peace was something you created for others while neglecting yourself. That grief is not weakness, it's integration. It's your system catching up to a truth your intuition has known for a long time. There will be moments where the old instinct resurfaces, the urge to explain, to soften, to rescue, to re-enter dynamics that feel familiar but costly. When that happens, you pause. You notice the pull without obeying it. You remember how exhaustion used to live in your body. You remember the tight chest, the restless mind, the quiet resentment. And you choose differently, not with anger, but with clarity. Clarity is the real transformation, because clarity doesn't argue. It doesn't justify, it doesn't persuade. It simply sees and responds accordingly. This is where your time becomes sacred. You stop filling it to avoid loneliness. You stop overconnecting to avoid discomfort. You allow space. And in that space, something unexpected happens. Your intuition sharpens. Your tolerance drops. Your discernment strengthens. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You no longer confuse familiarity with safety. You start asking better questions. Not out loud, but internally. Does this feel mutual? Does this feel steady? Does this feel respectful even when no one is performing? And when the answer is no, you don't spiral. You don't personalize it. You step back. Stepping back used to feel like abandonment. Now it feels like self-trust. And self-trust is what makes this transformation permanent. Because once you trust yourself, manipulation loses leverage, guilt loses its grip, emotional inconsistency loses its charm. You see things faster, not because you're suspicious, but because you're no longer invested in illusions. You don't need people to prove they care. You watch what's consistent. You watch what remains when you stop over-functioning. You watch how someone treats your no, your pause, your silence. That tells you everything. Words used to confuse. There's a quiet confidence that comes with this stage. Not loud, not performative. It doesn't need validation. It comes from knowing that even if someone leaves, you'll remain intact. Even if someone misunderstands you, you won't shrink to fix it. Even if someone withdraws, you won't chase them back into your life at your own expense. You stop fearing distance because you've learned the cost of closeness without respect. And here's the truth. Most people won't tell you. Some connections were never meant to survive your healing. They depended on your self-doubt, your availability, your overgiving. When you remove those ingredients, the dynamic has nothing to stand on. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you outgrew the role you were assigned. This is why the transformation feels final, not because you harden, but because you stabilize. You become someone who can love deeply without losing structure. Someone who can offer warmth without self-erasure. Someone who can say yes with intention and no without explanation. Someone who understands that empathy is powerful only when it's directed inward as much as outward. And from this place, life reorganizes itself. Conversations become shorter but truer. Relationships become fewer but safer. Your energy returns to your body instead of leaking into everyone else's emotions. You sleep differently. You think differently. You respond instead of react. You no longer confuse urgency with importance. You no longer confuse effort with love. You no longer confuse attachment with depth. You choose, and that choice echoes into everything. So when people say you've changed, you don't defend yourself. You don't correct them. You don't explain the journey. You let them sit with the discomfort of your boundaries, your calm, your absence from roles you used to play. Because the ones meant to stay won't need you to be smaller. They'll meet you where you are. This is the version of you that no longer negotiates with self-betrayal. The version that doesn't need to prove, persuade, or perform. The version that understands that love without dignity is not love, it's labor. And you're done working overtime for free. After this, your presence is intentional. Your energy is protected. Your empathy is selective. You don't disappear anymore. You don't overextend anymore. You don't abandon yourself to keep connection alive. After this, you move differently. You choose differently. You live from a place where self-respect is not a phase. It's the foundation.